There we go. It's just connecting. Okay. So welcome, everyone. And my name's Graham Furness. Thank you for tuning in over the Eastern time zone lunch hour. And we're going to go into looking at the connection today between two key strategy elements, which is portfolio management and business relationship management. And truly an opportunity, especially for those people looking to find more value and more purpose out of both processes, but also in particular business relationship management. Okay, and sorry, I'm just looking at some chat comments to make sure I can see what's going on verbally, but I think we're okay. Yes, I think we're broadcasting fine here. Okay, let's get into our slides then. So a quick overview of what this presentation. It's a short presentation, so we'll be fine for completing it in a half hour. Again, looking at the huge benefits and understanding the elements of what both portfolio and business relationship management is doing. And so clearly there's a move out there that all companies are trying to get towards with linking business drivers with technology and basically convergence. We're trying to get into a world where the business and IT are not one thing after the other, but they're moving lockstep together. And so we need to understand how we can better get that connection. A business relationship management ability and a portfolio management ability are both critical. That's critical for value realization and overall corporate strategy and success. Okay, and so basically we've got some introductory slides to set some basic definitions, but then we look at three basic roles for Gatekeeper, Service Monitor, and Service Innovator, which the portfolio management process provides, and the BRM practice can take advantage of and offer this further. Okay. And so I always like to start off just a couple of baseline definitions and understanding for the processes. And so first of all, portfolio management is one of the ITIL process areas, and so this presentation is sourced out of the ITIL best practice. And it's focused on ensuring that the organization can manage, basically, it's the ITIL words say, the cost and risk associated with the portfolio, and this is the ITIL portfolio. So critical to understand, this is not just a service catalog in general. It's an investment portfolio, and you have a pipeline. This is your intake about how major changes, addition, modifications, and removal of things are coming into the IT organization. There's a lot of business case and high-level, well, call it portfolio management, high-level portfolio management, governing what comes in and gets changed and goes out. And then we have operational services, which are serving the business currently. And again, we need to not just simply know that they're there, but confirm they're there, they're working, they're still adding value, and there's no unnecessary redundancies or anything in our portfolio. And then we have the retired services. And so it's a way of keeping track of key services that we know we may need to keep track of if we have to go back for any audit or other types of reasons. But anyway, so the main part of my presentation, we'll talk about portfolio management in relationship to the pipeline and the catalog. And then BRM is going to have a tight interface to these two pieces. So I like to call BRM a practice area. Not everything in the ITIL framework actually is a process, and BRM doesn't have a specific process. It's more of a practice area, and it's focused at embedding a strategic relationship manager within the business in order to achieve this business and IT convergence, this optimization of both parts of the organization working and functioning well together. And this is going to optimize our business success. So in my opinion, in the red text here, these two areas are probably some of the most critical strategy elements for making a real impact on the business that we have within ITIL, worth looking at. And this diagram over here is just giving an idea. If this is the diagram that portfolio management is focused on, managing the pipeline, the catalog, and retired services, then this is kind of the diagram for the BRM. The BRM owns and manages the customer. And what they need to know are the strategy and the outcomes that the customer is trying to achieve, the customer business process, which is helping the customer to run their business, and of course, what's their connection to IT? Well, that's good old IT services. Okay, and so continuing this, and then we get straight into the key points. But so understanding the purpose then. Portfolio management makes sure we have the right mix of services to balance the investment. So basically, we have a budget, and we need to know how to properly spend that budget back here on new items coming in the pipeline and managing and funding existing services, which is in our service catalog. The only way that we can ensure we have the right mix of services is down in these two pieces with BRM. So the BRM needs to make sure they can articulate the value of a service with their business customer. So from both the pipeline and the service catalog, the BRM has to work with the customer to say, what is this doing to help you achieve your business outcomes, right? And ITIL loves talking about business outcomes. Business outcomes are the key things that support our strategies and are the outcomes of a service. So basically, there's a connection already, right? We have to work together with the customer to get this understanding here, excuse me, and to properly understand the benefits. That can only happen with a good relationship from the customer who's telling us what's going on. And we have to constantly confirm the customer needs and make sure the services are meeting those needs. So this is now connecting all of these pieces together. So portfolio management has a job to make sure that we know what services we have, we know what business outcomes and what customers are being supported by them, and that we have a good financial reason for keeping or adding these services into our portfolio. BRM is the key interface you need to get that information to validate what we're doing. And so we always talk about BRM just being this handshake, this relationship between the provider and the customer. But really, BRM is the front customer-friendly end to helping the customer work with portfolio management so it can do all of these things of making sure we're making good decisions about what we add, change, or remove. We can track these things from project mode through to operational mode. We make sure there's a clear definition of the service, which we mention over here. The clear definition of the service is a concept of a service charter, which is a summary of all the business cases and how it morphs over time to say, here's why a service exists. It's just like a business case, but in easy to read English to justify why something is there. And we just mentioned any good business case should be linked to strategies, and therefore business outcomes drive strategies, and that's part of portfolio management. So someone needs to help portfolio management get all this information, and that's the BRM with the customer. Okay, so we're going to go through the three basic roles then, which portfolio management offers to the organization, and where business relationship management can lend a hand. Okay, so we'll start off with the intake pipeline. And just to jump back for a minute, the intake pipeline is here in the service pipeline. Okay, so in managing this service pipeline, All major changes that come into the organization go through the portfolio management vetting and review process, right? And so it's a very rigorous process. It requires anything new or being modified or removed, you start off with a business case. And portfolio management is the process that maintains the basic structure and templates and the information needed for that business case to be properly progressed forward. And so it's going to be detailed. It's a portfolio process. We want to make sure we're making decisions with good information. So the formal business case, managed, maintained by portfolio management, and then without a BRM, we give it to the customer to start filling out and going through all of the checks and balances to submit to us. And in truth, no customer really wants to go through that, which is quite often why we have shadow IT and customers going through their own way of trying to get technology in the business. So to help portfolio management succeed in getting these business justifications for anything coming into the intake pipeline, like anything that's going to become a project, we have business relationship management who's going to work with the customer. And they're basically, BRM is a practice area. We can think of it as being a professional service to the business, which helps the business get things done. And so one extremely high value add customer service that our BRM activity can offer is to actually develop the business cases and navigate the portfolio management intake process and procedures. Right? So this is a huge, as far as I know, totally new way of thinking about BRMs. You know, BRMs are not just there talking with the business and saying, how are the services working for you and do we have to do an improvement? We're actually embedded in the business and saying, okay, what do you need to get done? How can I help you get it done? How can I start driving the business cases and work the portfolio process to get things started? Okay, so that's a huge, huge benefit to the business. It's a huge benefit to portfolio management as well, because now instead of people fighting the process, BRM, being one foot in the business camp but also one foot in the IT camp, BRM is there to follow the IT process. And ultimately, this allows the BRM role and the BRM person, they're going to get a very deep business understanding of their customers because they're writing up the business cases. And also from a customer point of view, they're going to be really happy with this because no customer wants to go through this detailed intake process. Okay, so this is one area that if you're thinking of linking business relationship management and portfolio management, you're going to get huge, huge benefit from. Now, the second part of the gatekeeper role and the intake pipeline is the expertise that portfolio management brings in knowing all of our capabilities, which are across the service portfolio, which means across the pipeline of new projects and initiatives that have been submitted and approved as a project moving forward, and those that we currently have in the service catalog. So the reason this is part two is that once you write up everything in a certain way, the templates that portfolio management requires, and you submit it to the process, then portfolio management and solution architects all take a high-level look at each of these basic requests, and they want to make use of existing solutions wherever possible. So one of the big challenges that organizations have, the bigger you get, the more complicated it gets, but it's everywhere, regardless of size, is duplication and redundancy. You know, I'm in my past, I'm a project manager, and in many organizations, there's multiple project management software that's available to the organization. Some person might be using Microsoft Project, and another team or department might be using another portfolio management suite, and they all do the same thing. So why do we want that? That's ridiculous. Redundancy slows us down. So having portfolio management be the knowledge keeper, as well as a gatekeeper of all of the services and capabilities and things that we currently have, this is critical to reducing redundancies. And that also gives us a more sustainable and manageable environment. Because number one, if we all settle that in our organization, we're going to use one, let's say, Microsoft project to manage or deliver our project management services. Well, now it's easy from a maintenance point of view because we only have one service and one software title within it. And it's also easier for the business organization for people going from one project to another. And this information is not within the ability of the traditional BRM. You know, BRMs do not know every and all things about the organization's service catalog and service portfolio. So as a benefit to them and to the business, you need to reach into this knowledge-rich portfolio management process. This helps down here. If you have existing solutions when the business is looking for some type of capability, if you already have all or part of the existing solution in your portfolio, well, now you're fast to market because you can start to use it much quicker than you can try to acquire something new or use something new. And so critical for the value optimization goals. Okay, so this is everything related to part one, which is the role of the gatekeeper around the service pipeline, making sure we do the work for the business to write up the business and justification business case to get things into the pipeline, and then using portfolio management's knowledge and expertise to make use of existing solutions to become faster to market and better with return on investments and value by having portfolio management involved. So just based on those two things alone, my advice would be highly to integrate these two process areas. But there's more. So we go to the next piece here, the role of service monitor. So for portfolio management as a service monitor, we're in here. We're monitoring existing services in the catalog. And go back to here. Okay, there we go, part one. And so when dealing with the service catalog, the portfolio management, part of its process is regular review. So it's got a process for how to review everything in the catalog, make sure everything is justified. It's got the necessary tools to keep track, linking into the configuration database and others, so that we can keep track of all of the business outcomes, the business processes linked into IT services and technology. So basically, you know, in true ITIL terminology, we create service models, and service models is a listing of both the customer assets, which include customer processes, as well as IT services and technology. So this mapping activity is the start of a service model, which would then link into a more detailed relationship model within the configuration management database. So with BRMs, it's critical for a BRM to start to talk about the business elements, which might be at the top of this diagram, and start to understand what processes are involved and how are those driving my strategies for the business, and how are they related, how are they linked to business outcomes. And then eventually we need to get into a mid-layer and start to say, and what IT services might be supporting that structure, and then what technology underneath may be becoming obsolescent or obsolete or outdated or whatever it might be. You need some type of relationship diagram. In BRMs, it's too complicated for them, especially with the enterprise wide infrastructure. This is where you need a good portfolio management process to link into the larger ITSM ITIL processes to keep track of this. Right. So all of this necessary tracking and linking is going to be facilitated through portfolio management. Excuse me. So this frees up business relationship managers. They can have the strategic conversations up at the top of this model with business strategies and outcomes and business processes. And they can collect all this information and talk about services and interfacing applications that those processes are making use of. They bring all this information back to portfolio management, which then gets properly recorded and stored into your service management system. And so again, this becomes where portfolio management is providing the service models, service charters. Service charters are that for every service that might be at this layer here. There's an ongoing summarized business case in plain English saying, here's why this particular service exists, and here's how it links up to one or more customers. So a service solution may not be justified for one particular customer, but it might be justified for multiple. BRMs don't have that view, but portfolio management does. And so we can link it up to multiple business outcomes potentially and multiple business customers and strategies. Okay, so another huge advantage. In a lot of organizations that I've seen, BRMs are trying to do this, but they don't have the tools, the know-how, and structure to be able to keep track of all this information. We want to take advantage of portfolio management structure and tools. Okay, so here's one huge advantage for portfolio management to BRM, and BRM back to portfolio management by bringing the information. And then with part two, we have a structured review cycle. And so in this structured review cycle, we always go back to make sure the value proposition for what we have still exists, and also to go back and constantly look for and clean out redundancy. And this just recognizes services and service value changes over time. It's a big effort, and portfolio management is doing it, so we need to do it in conjunction with business relationship management and the customer. So the BRMs can carry out this review on behalf of portfolio management with their business partners. It's all part of the value realization and optimization effort for the business partner. And again, where a service supports more than one business partner and more than one BRM, well, the value proposition gets spread out further, and portfolio management can be the consolidation point to allow these strategic reviews to assess overall service value in the organization. Again, quite often things may not be financially justifiable for one individual or business, but can support many business areas and be justified. So this review process, portfolio management's doing it anyway. We should be doing it with BRM. This is another critical thing where BRMs now have a purpose to make this review work and to also work closely with their business partners while doing it. Okay, and then the last role, the third role, so we're just finishing up here. Innovation. So organizations are always talking about becoming more innovative. And in a lot of organizations now, BRMs are leading innovation labs and so on. Portfolio management has the same goal to know how to properly fund and how to properly innovate all of the different services in the service portfolio. So they have joint responsibility for this. It's going to be a collaboration. And what we need to do is identify, well, not every service requires innovation labs and experimentation, only a handful. And so BRMs will look at the business processes and work with the business partners to say, here's where we need things that are not just stable and fixed for a long period of time, that need to be innovative and competitive to drive the competitive advantage. And so this innovation is becoming more and more a common business need and pattern, but it doesn't exist 100% everywhere in the business. There's key areas that we need to focus on. So portfolio management can use the ITIL concepts of priority to go through and work with the business partners to say which are the key business process areas that need to find innovation to become more competitive and help to grow and maintain competitive advantage for the business. And that's where the business processes are identified. We then link it back to the appropriate resources for funding and for manning and staffing and running the innovation labs. And then portfolio management can be the one that drives these innovation labs, manages these innovation labs, and as we get different results, we can then forward these results and include BRMs to discuss these outcomes with their customers. So once again, it frees up the BRM not to have to be technical and not to have to be running these innovation workshops, but to be working on the technical results and finding out where it can be applied. Okay, and so that brings us to the end. Like I say, it was a nice short sort of lunchtime planned webinar here. But just to go back to the key summary piece, so portfolio management and business relationship management need to be working together. And BRM will carry out many of the process pieces for portfolio management and will actually do the work for the customer, do the reviews for portfolio management with the customer, help to get the innovation results from portfolio management and share them with the customer. So that portfolio management can be more of a technical portfolio process area, and the BRM can be the friendly, customer-facing interface with the business and helping the business work with IT by making it painless. Okay, so that brings us to the end time that I have here for our presentation. It's just gone 12:34. And now with Stephanie and Rihanna, we'll take any questions. Oh, and I see some chat comments about the presentation being recorded and sent out. Yes, I've got the presentation recorded, and yes, it will be made available to you. Okay, and let me just take a look through my chat window to see if we have any questions or anything anyone would like to discuss. No, I don't see any questions or anything. Stephanie and Rihanna, do you have any questions that you had seen during the presentation? Nope. Okay. Oh, I think I see a question here. Here we go. A question from Troy. I'll just read it out. So any tips for when the portfolio management and BRM roles are being conducted by the same person? Oh, that's a loaded question. If the same person is doing both, the challenge, I mean, this happens in smaller organizations or where you might be just getting started. We can always do multiple things. Whether or not we should be doing multiple things, you know, likely we shouldn't. But if you're doing both the portfolio management piece and the BRM piece, typically what's going to happen, I'll just tell you what normally happens. Anytime you get involved in more hands-on work, such as managing portfolio management and doing that kind of work, you end up not having enough time to have the more strategic, business-oriented work for your business partner. And it becomes more a matter of just keeping up with doing the analysis of existing services and the reporting in management of existing services and projects. There's no real tip. It's just a challenge. The roles in ITIL were separated. And outside of ITIL, there's also another organization I belong to and certified in called the Business Relationship Management Institute. And in the surveys that they've done, they said the number one reason for BRMs typically failing is that the strategic level is not given enough respect or acknowledgement to spend enough time with the customers working on strategies and working on business process and innovations. And so they mentioned there should be, in a good organization, there should be a strategic BRM as a role not encumbered by any type of hands-on tactical activity, and the tactical BRM, which is more getting involved in getting things done. So I'd suggest with this question here that don't try to become the strategic BRM because there's not really enough time and effort. Just focus on the tactical and make the business case that to do more innovation and more closer strategizing with your business partners requires a separate role. Okay, not the best answer, but it's the one that I know BRMI and even ITIL speak to. Okay, don't see any other questions there. Okay, a few thank yous. Okay, perfect then. So everyone, oh, here's another question just came in. Can you clarify the portfolio management role in tracking initiatives? Okay, and so in tracking initiatives, we've got our projects moving forward. The portfolio management role, if you have separate project management, you know, PMO, and an ITIL type of portfolio management, they just need to know project updates. Is the project proceeding on time? The BRM is going to work with the project managers, potentially if you're a tactical BRM, to make sure the projects are coming in and that the customer is participating. But from a portfolio management point of view, we don't have to get involved in the project whatsoever. We leave that to project management. So in terms of tracking initiatives, we simply track the progress. Give us a schedule and give us updates. And then another question here, do you recommend a separate leader for service portfolio versus project portfolio? Yes. Yeah, it's when it comes down to project portfolio, there's usually a governance and a corporate structure that requires managing all projects of all types, not just IT projects. And when it comes down to service management and portfolio management, this is where you have your IT and your ITSM experts who say, here's how we make good, well, the ITIL concept, the good utility and warranty. Here's how we make things not just completed on time, on budget, but also manageable and supportable, and you know, good security and so on. So there is a good reason to have those two things separate. If you can't, as long as you can educate the PMO about the concepts of portfolio management and ITSM concepts, it can be made to work. But again, there's a bit of a challenge because traditional PMOs just want to get it done on time, on budget, within basic scope. Okay. Any other questions coming in? No? Okay. Okay, if no other questions then, so I've been recording this right up to the end here. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining in, and hope that you found, even though it's just a half an hour, it's a good little primer to kind of go through the concepts of portfolio management and BRM. And I truly do believe there's a lot of initiatives with companies starting to enable BRMs in their organizations, and they're struggling with it. And they're struggling by trying to get them involved tighter with the business. And if you can start doing business cases for the business to get things into IT, and start doing reviews for portfolio management with the business, that really brings a tight integration and a tight value and really makes it strategic.